will save my prayers for your funeral.
Do you remember BioShock? The plane crash followed by the slow descent into an unknown yet strangely familiar world? The unraveling of a story that brought up questions of morality and whether the ends always justify the means, along with maybe one of the greatest twists in gaming to this day? I've just rolled credits on an indie horror game that gave me just a little taste of that same feeling, but with a slightly different coat of paint. So, would you kindly come with me while we talk about Crisol? What's up, you beautiful beasts, and welcome to the video where we're going to be talking about a stylish new action horror game called Crisol: Theater of Idols. In Crisol, you play as Gabriel, who washes up on the shore of the Spanish island Tormentosa. Taking control of the soldiers sent on a divine mission by the sun god, you battle through sentient statues using your own wholly infused blood to power your weapons as you slowly unravel what happened to the island, its people, and learn the truth about the gods themselves. In this video, I'll be going over a general outline of the game and its themes, what you can expect if you intend to pick up a copy for yourself, and how I found my time with Crisol. I'll do my best to avoid any major spoilers, but there will be a few. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to offer your prayers in both likes and subscribes, for I am a benevolent god. You can also watch me play through these games and more over on Twitch. All the links for my socials are down in the description. Crisol is a game that I found incredibly intriguing because of its main theme being religion. Now, I'm not a religious man. I never have been, but I find religion to be a perfect topic for certain games for a number of different reasons. One of my favorite Souls-likes is Blasphemous, which is deeply rooted in a twisted version of Catholicism. There's something about taking parables and distorting them like a holy version of the monkey's paw story that makes for some deeply disturbing narratives. Cults and fanatics tend to make for fantastic antagonists, in my opinion, because their faith is what drives them, not money or fame, but divine guidance which blinds them into committing atrocities. Look at Dead Space and the Church of Unitology, which unleashed the necromorphs intentionally due to their beliefs. It's all the more disturbing that they thought they were correct in dooming entire planets. These religious themes are what make Crisol's narrative and visuals interesting. We start the game as Gabriel, a soldier who washes up on the shore of Tormentosa. Visions sent by the sun god fill his mind, directing us to a cathedral atop the cliffs, and so the story begins. As we push on, we find the streets desolate. No life, no bodies, just the pitter-patter of rain that never seems to stop. The city is in disarray, with shrines to the god of the sea on every corner. Eventually, we finally come across another living soul. They quickly flee from us, only to hear their screams vanish into a church whose steps are drenched in blood. Crossing the threshold, there's no sign of the woman, only that same trail leading up to a statue and a radio calling out. Suddenly, the statue comes to life, making Gabriel into a little bitch before the sun god comes to his rescue, giving Gabriel's blood a divine edge, which transforms his gun into a holy weapon fueled by what flows through our soldiers' veins, introducing the most interesting mechanic in all of Crisol. Now armed with bloody firepower, we're able to defeat the statue and continue our exploration of Tormentosa. With the help of our new holy weaponry and the guidance of this strangely upbeat melodia, we're able to navigate our way to the church on the cliff, and our goal is finally revealed. We have been sent by the sun god to kill the god of the sea and restore the seal, keeping them imprisoned for a reason that we've not been enlightened about. Obviously, the undertones are there that it's not all quite as it seems, but the story is fairly concise and simple. You then spend the next 12 or so hours visiting key locations within the city, each ruled by one of the people whose blood holds the key to imprisoning the god of the sea once more. Locations such as a pleasure district full of gambling and other vices, to an industrial area where you'll find yourself crawling through meat factories and mine shafts. It all begins to start fairly formulaic pretty quickly, but not in a bad way. I never felt the whole, oh shit, here we go again vibes, but actually a sense of wondering, because I was curious how the game would tackle certain areas that I've seen done before, but in their own style. Each area followed the same basic pattern. You have a little hub area with your save location and merchant, and then it splits into multiple paths. One main path where your goal is, and multiple other parts you need to complete before the main one opens. It's not mind-blowing design by any stretch, but it doesn't really need to be. The game never stagnates, as it's always clear what your next objective is. Additionally, there are plenty of little nooks to explore that offer collectibles, from coins to upgrade your weapons, or lore entries that you can visit in the main menu. I genuinely felt compelled to leave no stone unturned. However, the game does help with this by adding one of my favorite quality of life changes that we've started seeing in recent games, and that's maps marking finished areas. It used to be you could search an entire map 3 times over and have no idea if you'd found everything, but now games have started showing when you finish an area, and Crisol does that too. New rooms show as red, but once you've picked them clean, they change to green, and this makes life, especially if you're a collectaholic, far easier. I will say though, if the developers ever end up watching this video, whoever's idea it was to put mines in the factory sections needs to visit HR, because it's clear you've accidentally hired Satan. That shit sucked. Crisol is created by a fairly small indie studio in Spain, Vermila Studios. They seem to have drawn heavily on their Spanish roots to turn Tormentosa into something that feels both grounded and uncanny, and is one of the major reasons I loosely compare this game to BioShock. Sadly, there are no plasmids or environmental effects, which is both a blessing and a curse, but the feeling of walking through this destroyed corpse of the city feels very similar to my journey through Rapture, and I could never shake that feeling. The comparisons continue as a lot of Crisol's story is delivered to you in the form of crimson ghosts reenacting echoes of the past, a lot like the original BioShock. I never did quite understand why BioShock got rid of those ghosts, but whatever. I do have to admit though, the ghosts do leave a lot to be desired, as it ends up being a lot of telling and not really showing, which tends to be Crisol's major issue when it comes to narrative and story. One thing Crisol has that BioShock didn't, however, is puzzles, unless you count those stupid plumber puzzles. Throughout Crisol, you'll have to look at your surroundings or ensure you read through journals to gather and find information for puzzles as you progress through the game. Some are simple safe combinations for a little bit of extra loot, whereas other ones are quite difficult and block your progression. In the first section of the game, you find yourself in an abandoned brothel, and you need to figure out which girl worked in which room to open an elevator. To do this, you need to observe what's in each room and then reference it with a journal to eventually piece everything together, and honestly, it was quite a brain scratcher. Now, I love a good puzzle, but I can imagine there will be a great number of players who'll bounce off this game the moment the puzzles start to get too hard. There's no hint system or map markers, and while I enjoyed that, I think a majority of people will get frustrated with going back and forth while they try and figure it out. This also brings me on to something which has been quite a big point of contention for Twitter gaming for a while now, and it's a topic that I absolutely love, and that is yellow paint. Crisol Theater of Idols fucking loves yellow paint. It is everywhere. It's on interactables, ledges, switches, mountable surfaces, and ladders. I know this is going to drive some people absolutely wild, and frankly, I am here for it. My personal thoughts on yellow paint are definitely going to cause some upset, so I'm going to leave that topic for an entire video of its own. But I'm going to warn you, if yellow paint upsets you, stay away from this game and hardware stores. Going back to earlier in the video, I mentioned that one of the most interesting mechanics in Crisol is that Gabriel's weapons are fueled by his own blood. Whenever you find a weapon, they undergo this slick transformation from mundane firearm we've seen time and time again to divine relic. And each of them offers this unique way to acquire new ammunition. The pistol's grip exposes needles when squeezed. The shotgun breaks to reveal a set where each shell should go. And the rifle, well, you can have a look for yourself. I actually use the rifle the least because it freaked me the fuck out to reload it. You also get a knife that allows you to parry, and I barely used it. Not to mention, it's got a durability system, because I fucking love durability systems. The combat doesn't really go beyond rooty-tooty point and shooty, but with different guns, and that's fine. It does what it needs to do, and it does it competently. But I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't have minded a little extra spice. Maybe some divine powers that could have acted like grenades or something. Besides the reloading with blood, there was another impressive aspect to the combat in that the statues all had destructible body parts. Destroy the leg and it would crawl. An arm would make them switch from crossbow to knife, while breaking the head would cause them to stumble about. The movement and combat are heavy, incredibly heavy, but you sort of get into this rhythm. Break a head, then a leg, and cycle around until you got them all. Because of the weight of everything, you really have to judge your priorities, and missing a bullet can genuinely sting. It's not like you're about to visit a cache where you can pick up 100 fresh rounds of ammunition. Instead, you have to watch your health bar drop and Gabriel bleed every time you reload. With all this being said, Crisol was never really that difficult, and I never found myself struggling for blood or having to make that choice between ammunition and survivability. Of course, you have to get blood back some way, and an important aspect of the game is mulching down creatures which heal you, and is actually quite disgusting to witness. You also carry a few syringes in case you can't find a fresh corpse to slurp down, and I rarely ran out of them. I would have preferred it if I was forced to choose between fight or flight sometimes based on my health. Because of this, the tension of this mechanic never really builds. Doubling down on this issue is when you kill enemies, they give you XP, meaning skipping them actually hurts you. You trade the XP, allowing you to buy some upgrades that all kinda seemed a little bit pointless in the grand scheme, and I think could have done better in other ways. Perhaps finding equipment or choosing between the sun and the sea god, which in turn affects the story path that you take. Instead, the game keeps it concise, and while that works, it's a bit of a trade-off in my eyes that feels a little lacking in terms of progression. I also miss when guns used to visually change when you upgraded them. Throughout the game, you'll buy upgrades from this strange witch who gets very little characterization, and I genuinely have no idea how they fit into the story. Either way, you'll buy the arbitrary upgrades from rate of fire to reload speed, but nothing visually changes, and considering how badass the guns look, it would have been nice to see them upgrade visually rather than just statistically. Circling back to the statues that you spend most of the game slaughtering, they are terrifying enemies and genuinely reminded me of some Whovian creature. They're these relentless killing machines that are puppeted by an unseen hand. Unfortunately, I was a little bit disappointed that they don't really evolve. There are a few alternative enemies like those holding dynamite or the cherub-like creatures that are introduced later, not to mention some fucking annoying painting creatures, but overall, for an entire playthrough, you'll be cutting down waves upon waves of the same statues, which makes me wonder wonder just how many of these bastard things are in Tormentosa to begin with. There is another enemy that I've not mentioned yet and goes by the name of Dolores. Now, I've mentioned in previous videos how much I hate the immortal pursuing enemy stereotype that we've got so much of these days, but Crisol actually did it right for me. She doesn't outstay her welcome, appearing in specific set pieces to ramp up the tension and then going away for a little until her next invitation, and it works. The only problem is she's kind of thick as a brick and is often thwarted by running into anywhere with a low roof. That being said though, if I'm being completely candid, I'm glad she's simple to evade. Unlike some unkillable monsters that get really fucking frustrating and you dread when they turn up, Dolores is a simple little addition to help shift the pacing for a scene before you continue. Not to mention, she plays a vital role in the story rather than just being scary set dressing. I got sent this game by a friend, and I'll be honest, going into it, I didn't expect very much, but coming out the other side, I'm genuinely charmed by this indie title made by a small Spanish team and published by Blumhouse Games, who so far haven't had the best track record when it comes to their indie horror titles. The game is incredibly simple, which actually works in its favor. The story is straightforward and the combat is basic with pretty low stakes. All of this culminates in an actually enjoyable, short, and uncomplicated experience from start to finish. But with that being said, as per everything in this video, I do have some gripes with the story. While I have made earlier comparisons to BioShock, Crisol doesn't hold a candle to it in terms of narrative, although it's not actually trying to. After rolling credits, I was unfortunately left feeling a bit confused. A lot of my issues boil down to the age-old issue that I have of telling me rather than showing me, and they did this around some pretty pivotal aspects. I was told a lot of things, and I simply had to take them on face value, rather than being made to believe them based on the actions of characters, which kinda sucked. It also pulls a really shitty bait and switch that, based on the evidence that we'd been presented throughout most of the game, doesn't really make a lick of fucking sense. And while I hate to say it, I also have a pretty big issue with the character of Melodia. Perhaps I didn't get it, or maybe I'm just a grumpy prick, but she didn't feel like she belonged in this game. I kept expecting her to be a hallucination, or the actual bad guy of this game, but no, she was just this odd character there to drive the narrative. She honestly just felt like someone put Claptrap in what was supposed to be a horror game. I do admit that I'm glad that Crisol didn't outstay its welcome. I loved the environments, the style, and how it played, and while I never found it scary, the topics and themes were certainly horrific. Horror is and always will be subjective, but I find that unbridled fanaticism is something that will always be unsettling, and Vermilia's ability to build a decent outing within an uncanny portrait of the world is something that I'd like to see more of. If you're looking for a weekend game or something to play on Twitch, I highly recommend smashing through a playthrough of Crisol Theater of Idols. Have you played Crisol? What did you think? Am I full of shit? Let me know down in the comments, and please, if you've enjoyed this video, consider supporting my channel by liking and subscribing. See you in the next one. What's up, you beautiful beasts? What's up, you...
I've been drinking Kool-Aid cameras like I did when I was 9, 'cause I like to pretend that I haven't lost the time. In the end, the nostalgia, though it tastes fine, I can only drink a